Hello, welcome to Old Virginia Homes. Today we're heading back to Colonial Williamsburg, which is one of the stops listed in the Virginia 250 passport. We'll be visiting the mid-18th century George Wythe House. If I had to describe this tour in one word, it would be color. From the moment you enter this home, you'll see the vibrantly colored walls, drenched in greens, reds, and blues, beautiful and cheerful. But we'll also learn how color played a huge role in George Wythe's life and in his mysterious and tragic death. His life had an ending that I was not prepared for, and if you don't already know the saga, you'll have to watch to the end of this video to find out what happened at the end of George Wythe's life. Join me as we visit the George Wythe House, an old Virginia home in Williamsburg. Let's go. This handsome brick house on Palace Green in Williamsburg belonged to George Wythe, who was a leader in the Patriot movement in Virginia, a delegate to the Continental Congress, and Virginia's first signer of the Declaration of Independence. The house is thought to have been designed in the mid-1750s by Wythe's father-in-law, Richard Tolliver, who was a builder, surveyor, and planter. George and Elizabeth Wythe lived in the home for more than 30 years. This house has witnessed some incredible periods of history, and the names associated with it read like a history textbook. The house served as General George Washington's headquarters just before the British siege of Yorktown. French General Rochambeau made the home his headquarters after victory at Yorktown. And in 1776, the house accommodated Virginia General Assembly delegate Thomas Jefferson and his family. Without a doubt, the conversations that took place within these walls would have been monumental and pivotal to the formation of our nation. In 1926, the Reverend Dr. William Archer Rutherford Goodwin acquired the home to use as a parish house as it was adjacent to the Bruton Parish Church, and he established his offices on the second floor. Because Goodwin and John D. Rockefeller Jr. were instrumental in the restoration of Colonial Williamsburg, these offices also served as headquarters for the historic area's restoration. Colonial Williamsburg obtained the property in 1938. It was declared a National Historic Landmark in 1970. The home has been furnished to look as it might have when George and Elizabeth Wythe resided in it. The house is a standard center passage, double pile, 2 rooms deep plan. This passage would have been used as a greeting space, a waiting spot, and of course a pass-through. The cheery, bright color and bold design of this wallpaper was meant to impress. Colonial Williamsburg researchers and curators believe that this house would have been papered, and 18th century designs and techniques were used to create the delightfully vibrant wallpapers throughout the home. The richly papered parlor features a built-in china cupboard to the left of the fireplace. The dining room is across the passage from the parlor, and it mirrors the parlor, also featuring a fireplace and built-in china cupboard. A bedroom is located behind the dining room. There's not a lot of evidence indicating how each room was really used, But Colonial Williamsburg experts have recreated the home's interiors based on what they do know about this house and others of the same time period. This back chamber also might have been the Wythe's summer bedroom, as it would have been cooler on the first floor. It also may have served as Elizabeth's office, since she would have managed the home, including the labor of enslaved people. This Colonial Williamsburg brochure from the 1950s shows the bedroom being interpreted at that time as a student's room. The room that is interpreted as Wythe's office is located behind the parlor. George Wythe practiced law and taught students, including Thomas Jefferson. He had an extensive collection of more than 600 books, which he left to Jefferson in his will. George Wythe was one of the most influential men of the Revolutionary era. He ranks among colonial America's finest lawyers, legal scholars, and teachers. In 1779, Wythe joined the College of William and Mary faculty to become the first law professor in the United States. He taught classes in the vacant capital after Virginia's government moved to Richmond in 1780. Other young men Wythe trained in the law included John Marshall, who became the fourth Chief Justice of the United States, and St. George Tucker, who was a lawyer, teacher, and judge, and who published a dissertation on slavery in 1796, which outlined a plan to gradually abolish slavery in Virginia. The second floor is similar in layout to the first. A central hall runs the length of the house with 4 bedrooms in the corners. George and Elizabeth may have shared a room or kept separate spaces, as many couples with the means to do so would have during that time period. Hosting guests was a regular part of the Wythe's life, so guest rooms would have housed others, including Elizabeth's cousin and her husband, who stayed for over a year in the early 1780s. This interesting room is called the lumber room, an old term used for a room that stored miscellaneous odds and ends. The space here illustrates George Wythe's passion for learning. As a citizen of the Enlightenment, he was deeply interested in politics, history, and science. The curious hole in the interior shutters, referred to as an oculus, would have been used to set up a solar microscope. All the windows in the room would be shuttered, making it dark. The solar microscope's mirror would reflect the sun's rays, directing them through the microscope and projecting the image into the room for viewing. The image of the tiny specimen could then be seen magnified on the wall. Records show that in the mid-1700s, between 14 and 17 enslaved people lived on the Wythe property. In 1783, tax records reveal the names of these people. Secordia and Paul belonged to Elizabeth's cousin and her husband, who were staying with the Wythes. Lydia Broadnax was likely the cook, and Ben may have driven the coach. Others who kept the home running smoothly were named Charles, Hannah, Betty, Jenny, Little Betty, and Fanny. According to further research done by Colonial Williamsburg historians, after Elizabeth's death in 1787, George began to give away or free the people he enslaved, seeming to mostly keep families together. In a deed of gift, he transferred Kate with her children and grandchildren, Rachel, Lydia, Lucy, Bob, and Jamie, and Fanny with her children, Paris and Isaac, to his late wife's family. In a separate deed, he transferred Rose and her 3 children, Edward, Betty, and a child at her breast, to another member of Elizabeth's family. He freed at least 4 people, Lydia Broadnax, Polly, Charles, and Ben. George Wythe argued both publicly and privately against slavery. He urged the emancipation of enslaved people, and by the end of his life owned none himself. He supported John Locke's assertion that all men were naturally born equal and independent. He believed that no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. Unfortunately, the worst type of harm came to Wythe when he was poisoned by arsenic in 1806. Wythe had moved from Williamsburg to Richmond in 1791. He no longer owned any slaves, but Lydia Broadnax went with him to Richmond as a paid cook. She purchased and moved into a home for herself and may have even owned a boarding house on this property. It was said that she witnessed George Wythe's grandnephew and namesake, George Wythe Sweeney, handling the coffee pot that contained the arsenic and throwing a little white paper into the fire. The day before, she had witnessed Sweeney searching Wythe's desk and inspecting his will, which named Sweeney as its major beneficiary. The arsenic-laden coffee killed a young free man of color named Michael Brown right away. Lydia became violently ill, but survived. George Wythe lingered long enough to change his will and disinherit Sweeney. However, because Virginia law did not allow black people to testify against white people, Lydia's eyewitness evidence would not be heard, and Sweeney was acquitted. Sweeney had been a ne'er-do-well before Wythe's death, forging Wythe's name on checks and stealing and selling some of Wythe's possessions, presumably to pay off gambling debts. Even when Wythe was on his deathbed, Sweeney was caught cashing another forged check. After his acquittal, Sweeney fled Virginia because of public vitriol. He reportedly was later convicted and jailed in Tennessee for stealing a horse, his name forever associated with bad character. To the contrary, upon being informed of Wythe's death, Thomas Jefferson wrote that a purer character has never lived. Thank you for visiting the George Wythe House with me, an old Virginia home.